France is the only country so far that systematically monitors energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions of the telecom sector. So it's really fantastic to have ARCEP on board for this panel. So Xavier Merlin is the member of the board of ARCEP. Then we have Jean-Manuel Canet, Senior Manager Climate Biodiversity Orange Group, who has done a fantastic job leading the greenhouse gas pillar of the Green Digital Action so far. Vanessa Gray, a colleague from the International Telecommunication Union. She's the head of Emergency Telecommunications and the Environment Division. Melanie Kubin-Hardewig, Vice Chair at GESI and Vice President Group Corporate Responsibility at Deutsche Telekom. And the panel is moderated by another colleague of mine from the International Telecommunication Union, Reyna Ubeda, who is the study group engineer of ITT Study Group 5 on environment and circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, for this nice introduction. Today, as you have seen, we have spoken a lot about the environmental impact of AI, but one it's very important is what the ICT sector is doing to keep their house in order, to what the measurements are we doing from the sector perspective, but also from the country perspective. And as Robin said today, the GHG emission pillar on the ICT sector is one of the main pillars that when it started 2 years, and it's also the work of ITU from data, standards, helping countries with policy, because for us, this is a topic of importance. So Robin presented our speakers today, and we have a few questions for this conversation, but we also want to hear from you. So we are going to leave a few minutes to hear from you your questions and any comments that you might have. So Xavier, and then please you also intervene, but I would like to start. What are the key trends that you are observing regarding the environmental impact of the ICT sector? And can you share what actions your organization is taking in response?
Thank you, Reyna. Good afternoon, everybody. Just as a reminder, ARCEP is the French regulator of digital infrastructure. And as mentioned earlier, we have been collecting data and measuring the impact of digital technologies since 2020. So we have just published our report for this year, and it shows two interesting, important figures. The first one is that in France, digital accounts for 4.4% of greenhouse gas emissions, 95% of which coming from data center and equipment. That's the first data. And the second, which is more threatening, is that if we do nothing, if the trend remains as they are, by 2050, this impact will triple, and electricity consumption through digital technology will double. So we clearly have a sustainability issue here. So what actions have we been encouraging and starting at ARCEP? The first one is really to properly assess this impact. And we have started in 2019 when the 5G spectrum was auctioned, because ARCEP has been sued at that time because people were fearing the impact of 5G on environment. So at that time, we decided there was no data at all in France, and we decided to start investigating. We started with telecom operators, then we added manufacturers, then data centers, and in parallel, we built a methodology to properly assess the impact of environment, which gave the figures I mentioned earlier. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is what we call data-driven regulation. It seems a very complicated issue, but it's very simple. A regulator normally publishes decisions. Here, we just publish figures. And the idea is that these figures will drive the behavior of consumers. I give you an example. With the data we have provided, we want to show to the consumer that, for example, we want to encourage the consumer to limit the speed of change of mobile phones, for example, to buy second-hand, to prefer Wi-Fi to 5G when at home, because the impact on environment is less important. So publishing this data, sharing this data is a good way to fight greenwashing.
Thank you so much, Xavier. And it's very important to hear what France is doing, and also having here the regulator to see what the country, what are the actions that the country is taking. Now, Vanessa, you are leading a great work in ITU. Can you please also tell us what are the trends that you are observing regarding the environmental impact of the ICT, and how, what are you doing to mitigate this?
Thank you, Reyna. Yeah, I often say, so the overall objective or mandate of ITU is not just to connect the world, but to do this in a responsible way. So we do have a great responsibility and a mandate, and we actually do a lot of work on tracking the impact of the ICT sector on the environment. And maybe just to highlight one of our key products or tools that we have is the Greening Digital Companies report and dashboard, where every year we track the 200 leading ICT sector, the digital companies, and we use from these companies publicly available data that these companies publish, and we track the energy use, we track GHG emissions, renewables, we look at the companies' commitments in terms of the targets that they have set, and also very importantly in terms of accountability and transparency. What kind of data do these companies publish? Because some of them publish a lot and others very little. So maybe just a few findings from this report. First of all, what's interesting is that within the ICT sector, we see that there are a lot of champions. Digital companies are really leading the way in terms of renewable energies, in terms of setting very ambitious targets, and also in terms of the data that they publish. So that's very, I would say, positive news. And on the other hand, and I think this is not surprising, we of course see an increase in energy consumption, GHG emissions. We've heard a lot already today about AI. We don't know exactly how much AI consumes, but we know it's growing. The impact on the environment of AI is growing, and so this is of course of concern, and we need to take precautions and steps there. Another thing we observe is many companies are leading the way. Digital companies are leading the way in terms of renewable energy, but many still face issues in terms of 24/7 access to renewable energy. So there's, I think, a lot of lessons to be learned there in terms of regulation, in terms of innovation. And also what we see is a lot of companies have very ambitious targets, but still we do not see sufficient decrease of GHG emissions. So I think a lot of lessons, and I think one of the really important points for us, and it's come up a lot here too, is that we need data-driven policymaking. So we really need to encourage companies and countries to publish and to collect these data.
Thank you, Vanessa. And also, as part of the Greening Digital Company report, just an advertisement here, they have an amazing dashboard where you can see, and it's available, publicly available on the ITU website, when you can see all these trends. So I invite you to take a look on this dashboard of the 24 edition. And I think you're coming with a 25 edition soon, no?
On the 5th of June, the World Environment Day.
Very good.
And we'll have 2 webinars, so inviting everyone here to join those. One in the morning and one in the evening for different time zones.
Some promotion here. So thank you so much, Vanessa. Jean-Manuel, you also, you work in Orange and a sustainability leader, but you also are the leader of the GHG emission pillar, and also you work on the standardization part of ITU, leading the question on that assess the impact of the ICT emission. Can you tell us what are the trends that you are seeing and what are the actions that we are taking? Thank you.
So thank you so much. So I've seen a lot of progress in the recent years. That is to say that the goals are set for the ICT sector now. As you mentioned, Reyna, the study group on these matters in the frame of the ITUT, the standardization branch, has developed some trajectories compatible with 1.5 degree. These trajectories are available. They have been used by many actors to set goals. And so the goal for the sector to be net zero at the latest in 2050 is set. There has been a goal set for 2030 decreasing emissions, GHG emissions, by 45% compared to 2020. And as Xavier was mentioning, some states have taken action, initiatives. Orange, being headquartered in France, is participating obviously in this effort, reporting at French level, but also complying with the regulations and publishing year after year information, data on its energy consumption and GHG emissions. What we have seen is that there is more guidance available towards all companies in the sector. For instance, the ITU has published a guidance on how to assess supply chain emissions. In our sector, these are the most important, often more than 80% for a company. And there is such guidance, which was published jointly with GSMA and GESI. And this brings a common framework on how to account for the emissions, and obviously this helps to reduce them. So the scene is set, a lot of progress has been done. If I take the example of Orange, many actions to decarbonize the electricity which is used, many actions to bring more circularity, to offer through a program, dedicated program called some refurbished equipment for end users, refurbished smartphones, for instance. There are a lot of actions regarding circular economy in all the supply chain. I would say a specific program with, let's say, suppliers that are considered partners towards decarbonization. And so this is the framework, and I believe some progress has been made, but as Vanessa, you were mentioning, we have still a big challenge to meet our objectives in 2030. As Orange, we are pretty on track for 2025 objectives. We have set objectives validated by SBTi for 2025, 2030, 2040. For 2025, on track. For 2030, challenge that will imply the whole community of suppliers.
Thank you, Jean-Manuel. Thank you for this information. And also something very important to highlight is that ITU standards are available on the web and for free. And also that they are very inclusive because ITU membership has member states and has also the industry and academia. So this is a very important aspect to highlight that we try to hear all voices and in the development of the standard. And you will hear, there will be another session later about the importance of standards, but we also have to see that standards, they were mentioning all day, all morning, the importance of having a harmonized methodology, and also they can serve as a policy tool. But now, Melanie, you are a Vice President of the Group Corporate Responsibility at Deutsche Telekom, as also Vice Chairman of GESI. Can you please tell us your view on how you see the trends right now?
Yes, and I will start with the GESI role because it's the broader one, looking at the ICT in general and looking at GESI, who's broadening their membership across the globe. So we do see what happens on different geographies around the world. And GESI has always been pushing for standardization. This is why we're working with the ITU for long-term together, because we believe that when you don't know what you measure and what you steer, when we don't have the data, we cannot really reach certain results. And we're strongly convinced that digital has a role to play in sustainability and how we come to a more sustainable state of this world in all SDG dimensions. So this is why in GESI we invest a lot in standardization, and we see that we need to do more. The most recent topic for GESI is looking into the role of AI. We heard a lot about AI this morning. We can fully buy, I think, into all that has been said on the difficulties to get access to data, the missing transparency on what AI finally causes for economies, for the private sector, for citizens, and so on. And we have set up different programs that I believe feed into that trend of looking into where can AI help us to become more sustainable. That is looking at the solution level, but also, and that is a new thing, is looking at the infrastructure level, because this is where we struggle with the missing data and the missing transparency. So that's what we're driving in GESI. And we see that this goes on despite all political developments. We see that our members are strongly behind that purpose. When I now go into Deutsche Telekom as an operator, so I do have a specific view on that industry. I'm not a solution provider. Deutsche Telekom is really basically a telco operator, has different side businesses, but the core is really telco. There, we also come across the same things, AI. As Deutsche Telekom, we started 2 years ago to set ourselves green AI principles, because we saw in the media the first results on the significant energy increase, the emission increase, and felt that if we want to harvest AI, and there's no way around it, we have to make it green from the very beginning. And this is a difficult thing, because even after 2 years having released our own principles, we're still struggling with the transparency from our core vendors. Let's face it. Yeah? Let's be very open with ourselves. That's it. I do see what Microsoft does in terms of the overall GHG emissions. They're part of our Scope 3. But what exactly is accountable, attributable to an AI usage of Deutsche Telekom from probably Microsoft solutions, not clear. And this is what makes it difficult to have a solid discussion with those vendors. And I think this is where we need to go. Because one, in the operator sphere, the majority of the emissions, the majority of the management problem is in Scope 3. And basically, out of that, more than 90% coming from Scope 3 if you look across telco. Within these 90%, 70 come from the supplier side. So this is where we have to focus on. And this means we need data transparency there. And there, I think we're still lacking meaningful standards. How we come to better carbon footprints. When I talk to my peers, this is on the horizon. How do we come to product carbon footprints from our vendors so that we can start to have a good, meaningful discussion on how and what and where can we change? I think we're already beyond that. We know we need renewable energy for electricity. We know we need to change the way we do buildings, how we serve our fleets, and so on. But that's, I think, clear. We have to do it. We haven't done all the things we need to do, but the plan, in theory, is clear. On the Scope 3, on the vendor side, a lot to be done still. And I think this is one of the key things, key trends in combination with AI as a technology. How do we get a grip on those topics?
Thank you so much, Melanie. Yes, indeed, Scope 3 is a challenge. And as part of this challenge, and also saying about collaboration, because we have heard collaboration. Right now, Melanie mentioned GESI collaborate with ITU, with GSMA. And as part of this collaboration, ITU, GESI, and GSMA develop a guidance to guide telecom operators on how to assess Scope 3. So this guidance was very beneficial to help them to assess this emission, because as you have heard, and you will hear, and you know it, it's very difficult. But there is more needed, because right now it's just a guidance that needs more interaction with other stakeholders to go as well to different aspects. So now, we have a few more minutes, and Xavier, what are the next steps that we should take? What are the concrete actions that are needed to mitigate the environmental impact, and what support or conditions are essential to enable these actions? Too many questions.
Many questions in a few minutes. Maybe two examples from ARCEP. The first one I would like to mention is about eco-conception and eco-conception of digital services. I know that many people know about eco-conceptions of products, because in Europe, for example, there is a regulation about eco-conception of products. You cannot put a device on the market if it doesn't abide by the regulation, but there was no framework for services. And we at ARCEP, with other partners, we decided to work on this issue, and we published a guidebook last year. And I'll give you examples why we believe it's important in this respect. For example, if you want to build a sustainable video service, you can lower its resolution, you can limit autoplay or infinite scrolling, and in the end, it will increase the lifetime of your equipment. And I mentioned that the question of equipment is very key in the digital impact on environment. Second example is about AI. AI is a digital service, and in our guidebook, you can find examples of how to reuse an existing database, for example, how to optimize training from AI, and that in turn is a way of reducing resources, water, energy from AI. This guidebook has been published 1 year ago. We already have significant examples. For example, the train company SNCF in France is using it on its website and application to reduce its impact. The French public broadcaster is already using it in its video system. So it's something that's another brick to contribute to the reduction of the impact. The other thing I want to mention, and coming back to measure, which we believe is really the core issue, and that has been mentioned by other people here, international cooperation is really very important. Two things. The first one is, as had been said before, we were the first regulator to engage on this route, environmental route, and we are working with other fellow regulators in Europe and at international level. And we want to share our experience and encourage them to work on this issue. I just want to add that we have had the chance that the Parliament has voted law that gave us the power to collect data, which is, of course, very important because otherwise nobody, apart from the telcos, nobody would give their data to the French regulator. So that's something we're explaining, we're sharing our experience. And the second aspect, of course, is ITU. ITU is really playing a key role in this respect, and I really want to acknowledge the importance of the role of ITU here in bringing all countries together to share experience, to share standards. We are very happy to take part as ARCEP in working groups related to this issue. And again, we all live on the same planet. The players, digital players, are global, so the solutions are global. They are not national. And we believe that ITU is really playing a key role here. And thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much. Melanie.
Yes. So I already mentioned that from the GESI side, we'll definitely push the AI projects, which we just kicked off on AI with purpose, looking into the solution side, but also having an intensive work as we did in the past with the smarter reports, if any one of you knows that, looking into the digital infrastructure element of AI and how AI can help there and how we can sort of leverage principles to become greener from the very beginning. That's one thing we'll push in GESI. On the DT level, I mentioned Scope 3, product carbon footprint, which is something that we will not be doing alone. We started to group together in a number of associations, but also within the peers, because we do see it's a sort of closed ecosystem we're working in telco, and we jointly have to go into that design. How do we get to that product carbon footprint, but without overdoing it? And I think that is at the moment also the critical tipping point of standardization versus regulation, where from a scientific point of view, you could do a great paper, a super great standard that covers all the elements, that is really solid, but then you hit the practical world of the private sector and all the limitations you have on resources, on does it mean anything to me operationally? And this is where it sometimes falls too short. So we need a very practical solution on those topics to really get going beyond what we have with the existing standards, so that the private sector really follows, because I think it needs more than just the telcos, the big ones who have more resources. It needs a lot of our small players and small suppliers to follow, and for them, it has to be manageable. So that's what we will push, and what I think should be pushed as a next step, so that we can make the next steps and create some little successes while we go.
Thank you so much. Vanessa.
Yes, thank you. And really building, I think, on what both of you have said, I mentioned before we need more and better data. We are collecting already from the companies, and what we're really trying to do now is move to the country level, because we believe that currently countries do not sufficiently track and monitor the impact of the ICT sector on the environment. And so we have our expert group on telecommunication indicators, the ACTI at ITU, and they have just very recently created a new group on environmental indicators, where we bring together companies, governments, other experts to identify a set of indicators and definitions to support countries in monitoring the ICT sector's environmental impact. And there, again, we're very grateful for France and ARCEP, the French regulator, because, you know, as we've highlighted before, you've done an excellent job. And so we use this as a good practice, and we try to encourage other countries to follow the example. And so this is, I think, again, you know, important role of the ITU. I think one other thing, maybe just what we've observed is we see a lot of commitments, targets from companies, but where we would like to see more progress is on concrete climate transition plans to make sure that, you know, these targets can be achieved. And I think that's, again, something where more progress could be made. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please give me 2 minutes before, because we have just a few seconds, but if you can give me 2 more minutes, Jean-Manuel.
Yes, so I try to be short. So building on what you have just said, the importance of assessing in a common way, and so the importance of international standards, and very grateful also to the role of the ITU on that. I would like to mention several standards which are under development right now. One is expected to be launched soon on transition plans, precisely because we acknowledge this necessity for having more precise transition plans and actionable transition plans. One standard is on the assessment of artificial intelligence, its impact, its positive and, let's say, negative impact on the environment, so inviting to join these efforts. And also we have a standard on shared situations, what we call, for instance, the assessment of the environmental impact when networks are built jointly. This can help reduce emissions, but it has to be accounted in a robust way so that we can prove that. And so a standard is under development on this aspect as well.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I told you that we were going to have one question, but we don't have more time because I see my colleague saying Reyna out. But please allow me, help me to clap to these excellent experts. And thank you so much. We are here for you for questions during the coffee break.